Hi everyone, this is Kenneth Chu, author of Mother Industrialist, perfecting the balance between motherhood and business success. And welcome to episode 33 of Mother Industrialist Live Show, where we talk about entrepreneurship, parenting, and life. And in this episode, we are going to talk about the lifeline you need as a working mom or entrepreneur mom. And today I have this great guest, awesome guest, and she has made her time to really come and when we started she has already very excited to really come onto the show, and I'm so excited to introduce her, to get her on the show. So she's a serial entrepreneur, she's an international speaker, she's also the host of the Single Parent Summit, and nevertheless she's a mother of two. And without further ado, let us welcome Tonia. Hi Tonia. Welcome,
Hi
welcome.
there.
Hi. How's your day? It's morning over at your end, right?
Yes, it is morning, and it's a beautiful morning, and I'm so sorry
Wow.
for the extra sound. That was my attempt to share the same video on Facebook at the same time.
Yeah, because I heard, is it on my side that
Nope, that was
the
all my
opening?
fault.
Okay, no worries, no worries. But at least I was checking on the audio and saying, hey, how come there's a sound? But nevertheless, I guess this is live, and all of us can feel that it's live because sounds are coming in and stuff. So thank you for making time, and I know that it has been a while since our last meeting, and I'm so excited to see you. You're well now, and you're excited. You're all dolled up all, for today, and your laughter and your smile. So there's a tradition before we kickstart the show, where every guest get to post a question of the day out to the audience and also to the next guest before we can kickstart with the show. So are you ready with the question of the day posted by the previous guest before we kickstart with the show?
I am.
Okay, so the question of the day is, how has having your kid or your children help in your business or work? So I repeat
Hmm.
again, how has having your children help in your business or in your work? So give some time to think about it while I'll go to Facebook and check if our audio are good and if our sound are good.
All
Okay, is that
right,
good?
sounds
Yeah,
good.
we will see if our connection is good. So give me some time, I will come back to you, okay, Tanya?
Okay.
Okay, I hear myself. Okay, it's always weird to hear yourself on audio. Okay, I'm waiting for your part. Okay, yeah, I think I talk quite a lot.
You're the host. You're supposed to talk a lot.
Yeah. Okay, I hear you. Good. But it seems there's a bit of lag. Maybe I can maybe can just test it out later. So, Tonya, are you ready with the answer to the question of the day?
I am. And first, I have to say that I love this question because so often as working parents, we hear things, and especially working entrepreneurs, we hear things like, oh, it's so hard to work with my children, or we always hear the negative. So I love that the question is the positive. How has that
Hmm.
helped? And I think for me, I mean, clearly, I adore my children. Like, I am so in love with these two. I think they're the two most amazing human beings on the face of the planet. And I think that they've helped given me so much clarity and direction. There are times when, I should say, motivation.
Hmm.
There are times when I am exhausted and I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'll
Hmm.
have a conversation with one of the two of them that mirrors back to me something that I've given them along, the course of our lives together. And as they're saying, what their experience is like in our lives, it's just so uplifting and encouraging. And we're really such an amazing team together. I'm so grateful for that.
Wow, that's good. So your children has basically fuel you and power you up to whatever that you're going through in your entrepreneurial journey, right?
Absolutely. And I think they also ground me in a certain way that I can very easily be like all work all the time in my
Mm.
head. And so to be able to stop and have a pillow fight, or I
Yeah.
mean, and we take our pillow fights very seriously in our family. It's just one of those things. Whenever we travel and we go to hotels, it
Mm.
is mandatory, absolutely
Wow.
mandatory that we jump on the beds and have a pillow fight, because now that they're older, I don't let them do that part at home because they'd be
Yeah.
too big to jump on the beds.
Okay.
But whenever we're in a hotel room, I can guarantee you we are
Wow.
jumping on the beds.
I'm feeling sorry for the hotel staff that every time they, oh, there's a pillow fight again and stuff like that. But
We do
I guess,
tidy up.
yeah. But I guess that will be your bonding time with your children, because you were saying that your children are quite like in their teens, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yep. And my
imagine
son is
that.
16 and my daughter's 15.
Yeah, I cannot imagine that. Did I do any of that like during my teenage years? And that also show that how knitted and how closely knitted you guys are, especially you and
Mm.
your children. And that is a very good start. And now we can officially kickstart with the show. So Tanya, before we start, maybe you can do a short introduction about yourself, out to the audience, because the audience may be new to you. They may not know much about you. Maybe you can introduce yourself. What were you doing prior to what you were doing in your current business, and
Hmm.
what is your background like, and where are you from? You can just share with us.
Okay.
Yep.
Sure, happily. So I'm actually from just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the States. Right now, though, I'm coming to you live from Niagara on the Lake, actually St. Catharines in
Hmm.
Ontario, Canada. I actually just finished a 3-day retreat, and it was an amazing experience. So this is, you're getting me like post retreat right before I go get an 8-hour car drive. So there's that. But I started my first wedding planning company when I was a junior in college. And it was one of those things that I always knew that that's what I wanted to do before anyone really knew what a wedding planner was.
Hmm.
So that was an interesting experience to be the stack, to be the girl with the stack of Martha Stewart weddings magazines that wasn't actually dating anybody seriously. So I'm not planning a wedding of my own, but I've got all these wedding magazines. That's kind of who I was.
Hmm.
So with that idea, I spent some time in corporate in event planning on that side, and then moved around quite a bit. By the time I had my children, I got to the point of saying, okay, corporate event planning would keep me on the road too much. It's
Hmm.
time to start the wedding planning again. So, kind of ping ponging, between all these different things. And as they grew and as I grew and changed, there's so many different layers, I think, to the way that my life has kind of shifted,
Hmm.
along the way. And the more that I could stay present in that, and I was open to all of the changes. So, for example, one of those changes is that I also work with entrepreneurs and help them understand the strategy of live events and do all the planning with that. So we actually have a collective that we work together there.
Hmm.
And then I'm also a professional speaker. So this seems like they're all very different things. And at the
Hmm.
end of the day, I found that my personal philosophy comes down to care, connection, and creativity.
Hmm.
So everything that I do falls into one of those three, or it's where they overlap. So
Hmm.
even though they seem very different, in my mind, they're all very, very connected.
Wow. That is your very very short introduction, which is good. You have already shared with us what are the different areas, and because you are a serial entrepreneur, you are doing different businesses at the same time, and having two children, which is something that I would respect you, because a lot of mompreneur with one business, they are really, I would say, really stretched, really
Mm.
spreading themselves thin. But you having two kids and also managing a few businesses at the same time, which is, what is your secret? Is there any secret to you managing so many businesses and also handling motherhood at the same time,
Oh.
or is it a lot of
Coffee.
things? Coffee.
Coffee is a
Okay.
pretty strong contingency there.
Okay.
No, I mean the running joke is between the coffee and the wine and dark chocolate. That's pretty
Okay.
much like, those are the three things I have to have. But no, really, I think early on it was the idea of recognizing that it wasn't just up to me. If I
Hmm.
was really going to be able to do all these different things and to be as successful as I wanted to be, I needed to be able to get out of my own way
Hmm.
and to have help. And so early on, finding the advisory board, really going after information and understanding how this could work or how that could work. And a lot of times recognizing that I was not the one to figure it out.
Hmm.
So to be able to say, okay, I know that I need to work on my Pinterest game. Well, guess what?
Ah,
I'm not going to spend the time to understand all the ins and outs of Pinterest. And I found an amazing, amazing person who specializes in Pinterest.
wow.
So, being able to really identify what are the pieces that I need to do,
Hmm.
that I need to be the only one to do it, and then everything else that I can delegate so that it's not just all up to me. Because oftentimes when I'm stuck,
Hmm.
it's because I'm the bottleneck.
I see. But who is there anyone that gave you the idea that you should outsource or you should get someone who specializes in that instead of you being the one that is like learning the Pinterest and learning how to use it? Who is there anyone or a mentor or a coach that is there to guide you, or you just figured it out by yourself?
Oh my goodness. I am a huge, huge proponent of coaches and live events and conferences and training.
Mm,
And I think that really, if there was one thing that I could point to be a catalyst for the kind of change that I've experienced, it would probably be that one piece.
mm,
10 years ago, I'd say maybe a little bit more than 10 now, when my kid's father and I divorced, that's
mm,
really when I got very serious about not only my business, but about my own self growth.
mm,
And in that, it meant that I started going to conferences and trainings. And it wasn't just like the business side of things. There was also this piece of who am I?
mm,
What's really special about me? And how do I show up in the world? And then after the general information, then it starts to get much more specific. So there are dozens of mentors and coaches that I've learned from over the years. And I think most recently, it's really fun because it's actually both a mentor and a client. But Ari Meisel is probably one of the ones who finally got through my thick skull
mm.
about the idea of his philosophy is optimize, automate, and outsource. And I've
Wow.
learned so much from that, and having that clarity and the very specific direction for that has
Mm.
been incredibly helpful.
Wow. So you were saying that you were servicing this client at the same time you are also learning and also you had like kind of like a breakthrough for yourself that you have like level up, I would say.
Hmm.
Wow, wow.
Absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
really rare to have such opportunity, I would say. Yeah, that you have a client that pays you at the same time you are learning at
Right.
the same time, which is like we always say like one stone kill two birds. You have
Hmm.
like the two of the best thing in the world, and that's it. I would say that would be because you are constantly learning, and also because you also go through a lot into personal development,
Hmm.
and you just shared on one point which is something I hear a lot from a lot of mompreneurs is always the moment that they were in that they have, I would say, no, not really a choice, that they would have to invest a lot in themselves to grow, and when
Hmm.
they grow by themselves their business starts growing. Is that what you see?
Absolutely. I don't think that could be a statement that could be any more emphasized.
Hmm.
That wouldn't be like add a thousand more exclamation points behind it.
Wow.
Because I think really what it comes down to is in so many ways, how we show up in the world is how we're showing up for ourselves. And if
Hmm.
there's not a consistency, if there's not a congruency in who we are and how we think and feel to the things that we're doing out in the world, that's something that is so transparent to the public. And if you're coming from a place of, please hire me, that desperation seeks through
Yeah.
and no one's going to actually hire you. But if you can invest the time and money and energy into yourself to
Hmm.
become the best version of yourself, at that point things start to shift. And when you know who you are and you can stand firmly in that identity,
Hmm.
there are so many other things that you've already put into effect, changes that are happening that are almost outside of your control at that point. And it's really up to you to follow those impulses and to follow kind of along the path. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that's where it gets really fun. Like that's when the
Wow.
adventure really kicks in.
Yeah, it seems that you are taking it like a lot easier because you started entrepreneurship at a very young age, at college, right? You were saying.
Hmm.
Yeah, and maybe for a lot of mothers out there, especially a lot of them is because they became a mom and they were working mom before. They started in the corporate, and
Mhm.
also when they became a mom, they realized that hey, a corporate job may not be able to allow me to spend more time with my children, and that's where they will come to a point of time that they are lost. They felt guilty and all that, and that is something that we talk about in our last meeting about this dead zone, that you were
Mhm.
saying that people um, they need to find their purpose, but a lot of them they lost the purpose, and they are
Mm.
kind of in the dead zone, not knowing what to do. They're just going
Mhm.
to work like maybe dragging themselves to work, not 100% present for their children, and also even for people around them, especially their loved ones. So we also talk about the three factors for someone to get out from the dead zone. Maybe you can share with
Mm.
us what are the three factors, and also maybe you can elaborate more on these three factors and why is it important, and also the way for them to get out from the dead zone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to. And I'll also go a step further. I think that it's very easy to look at someone, who's had an experience like I've had and kind of say, oh, well, they did it this way and
Hmm.
that's the only way. And first of all, that's not true at all. Everyone has their own journey. And I think another piece that it can be very easy in the online entrepreneur space is to elevate someone to the point of saying, oh, well, you never know their backstory.
Hmm.
You see this overnight success. You don't know that it was a 14-year process to become an overnight success.
Yes.
So before I even share about those three cornerstone pieces, I want to tell you a little story
Okay.
about what my life was like
Wow.
during the process of kind of right after the divorce from the kid's dad. I was back in corporate at this point, and my children were 4 and 5.
Hmm.
And the way my day started was the alarm would start buzzing at 3:45 in the morning,
Wow.
and there's this process of like, didn't I just do this? I swear I've just done this. I just got to bed. Why is the alarm going off already? And I started this entire day into the idea of sneaking out into the living room, trying not to wake anybody up. My mom is sleeping on the couch. I'm pulling up the blanket over her shoulders and I'm whispering, thank you again. And I'm tiptoeing down the hall and I'm kissing each of my kids goodbye. And I jump in the car and I run to Starbucks because I'm working the opening shift at Starbucks because
Oh.
my corporate job doesn't provide health insurance. So by the time I clock in, and I've just barely made it on time, and I'm setting up all the pastries. The morning rush starts. Everybody's
Hmm.
coming in, all the regulars. I'm really hoping I don't screw up their drinks because it's really hard to be a barista. Like, I have mad respect for them. I did it for
Yes.
about 6 months and I was like, I can't keep all the recipes in my head. So work the 3 hours there, 3.5, 4 hours, whatever it is, and grab my triple grande caramel macchiato, run to the bathroom, change into professional clothes, run to my corporate office. And I
Wow.
work there from 8:30 to 5:30. And I'm racing out the door out of the corporate gig in order to get my kids from the after school program before the fines start, because of course they fine you
Yes.
if you don't pick up your children on time. And
Yep.
by the time I get home, we've got, the backpacks, the grocery, the laundry, we run through the door, and I'm exhausted. I am flat exhausted.
Hmm.
And the only thing I can come up with so quickly for dinner, because of course the children are starving, we're having cereal. We're having cereal for dinner, and we're doing it for like the fifth time in a month.
Wow.
It is a very regular occurrence. Run the kids through their baths, trying to do their homework, and then you get the question of, Mommy, when are you going to marry Daddy again? And nothing will like
Wow.
just totally stop you in your tracks like that kind of conversation. So then of course I'm going, well, that's really just not going to work for multiple reasons, including the fact that that's just not going to happen. So I don't know, it's just there's so many different layers, I think, to the idea of who I was in that moment. I was so disconnected from myself.
Hmm.
I was trying to live the life that I thought I needed to provide for my kids and to continue this idea of the corporate world, because that was supposed to be easier, right?
Yes.
Like, it was the idea of, the company would take care of me if I gave them all my time. Well, I
Yes.
was giving them all my time, all my energy, and I wasn't seeing my children.
Hmm.
And so for me, I got to the point the same year, this was a crazy year for me. The same year that we divorced and he remarried, and the company that I was working for announced layoffs.
Wow.
And I literally, I mean, I'm so not exaggerating, I literally raised my hand to volunteer to be in the first batch of layoffs because I just couldn't handle the ambiguity at that
Mm.
point. There was this whole thing like, I ended up unconscious on the bathroom floor because my heart totally gave out from all of the adrenaline that was in my body. So there's more to the story, but it was such a pivotal year for me. And I think one of the things that I think about so often, I adore the quote from Plato that the unexamined life is not worth living.
Mm.
And for me, that year, especially lying on the bathroom floor, that was my question. The unexamined life is not worth living.
Mm.
I think so often it's easy to get into the rhythm of the day to day, and we put our head down and we do the work that's in front of us because it's all that we know.
Yeah.
And we don't take enough time to pause and ask the question and to truly examine our lives. Who are we? What is it that we're doing? Who is it that we're doing it for? Who are we doing life with? Those important questions really can derive so much of our value, and yet we're not asking the question.
Yeah.
So sorry to take us kind of,
No,
in
no,
a
no problem.
different
But which
direction
is good.
there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, I mean, so I want to be very clear. I'm not one to be put on a pedestal by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm incredibly transparent about what the process has been like to get here. And it's not even just, I think, becoming an entrepreneur. I think there is a massive journey in being an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
because it's one thing to make the step, and that is a huge, risky, gutsy thing to do. And there's a whole nother skill set that is required to be an entrepreneur, not just to become one.
Mm.
And so to that end, the three cornerstones that we had talked about, I think that they really fall into three categories. One is clarity,
Yep.
and the second is the micro changes, and I'll get to that in just a second. And the third is self-care.
Mm.
And that often surprises people, that I consider self-care to be so incredibly important. So yeah, there's a whole story to all of those different pieces.
Mm. And that also brings us to today's topic, which is the lifeline you need as a working mom or entrepreneur mom. And both of us also agree that one of the factors and which is self-care, which is really important because I've interviewed a lot of mompreneurs to date. Is already episode 33. So a lot of them, they always say that don't be too hard on yourself, especially as a mother. Don't
Mm.
be pushing yourself like you're not doing enough. In fact, you're doing a lot, and you have to take care of yourself. Like the last episode, we talked about this oxygen mask that
Yes.
if you take a flight, you have to put it on yourself before you attend to your children. But a lot of time, a lot of women, when they become a mother, they start giving the oxygen mask to their children or to anybody else except themselves. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where they start to deplete, they start to feel exhausted, they start to feel physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, everything just went down. And that
Mm-hmm.
is where a lot of them drop into the dead zone. And this is where like today's topic is the lifeline, which is very important, which is self-care. The rest I find that is equally important, but the self-care is something that a lot of mothers, especially when they started doing business, they've forgotten about this self-care. like 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 if I were to make a comparison, even for men or women, even before we became a parent, like for me, I'm a dad with a 9-year-old daughter. So before I became a dad, everything is about myself. I take care of myself,
Mm-hmm.
I take care of my hair, my skin, everything. But when we became parents, we started to give a lot of care, concern. Like my daughter's hair has to be nice, beautiful, uses organic shampoo and stuff like that. Well, for me, I would just use normal shampoo, even the cheaper shampoo. So for us parents, we tend to sacrifice in a way. We always think that we need to sacrifice a lot of our stuff. In fact, we can still live and pamper ourselves at the same time to take care of our children. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you don't save yourself by putting the oxygen mask on you, in the end, you will not be able to help or save your children. And that's where I always bring this analogy of this in-flight instruction, especially on the
Mm-hmm.
oxygen mask, to share with a lot of entrepreneur, even mothers that I coach, to really save themselves first. Because a lot of time they're talking about, oh, I'm talking about my kids, I'm all around the place and stuff like that. But I will ask them, how about you? Are you taking care of
Exactly.
yourself, your health, and all that stuff? Like your lack of sleep, you felt that your figure is going haywire, you getting fatter, getting plumber, your skin is not good, and stuff like that. But why are you doing that to yourself? That's where the self-care
Mm-hmm.
comes. And also, that is something that we talk about, and it's very, very important. So for you, what is your take on, like you were saying, on clarity, the micro changes, and also the self-care? Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I could not agree any more fully. I think that of the three, when we talk about the idea of the lifeline,
Mm,
for me, it really does come down to self-care. And I would take it even a step further. I think that when a lot of people say things like self-care, you think about, getting a massage or having your hair cut or, getting your nails done, things like that that can be very surface level. And those can all be very, very wonderful things, especially when we're in this place of just absolute deprivation because we're not
mm,
sleeping enough, we're not
yeah.
drinking enough water, we're not eating the foods that feed our bodies,
Yep.
and we're not prioritizing ourselves to say, I deserve 90 minutes to go do this and take
Yep.
care of myself, and I can carve out that time just for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me personally, I'm sure there's a few people that are kind of like giggling because they know how hard this has been for me.
Mm,
And I think it's finally sunken in. And
mm,
it has changed everything about how I structure what I do and when I do it. But to take that even a step further, I look at it as a very foundational piece because, yes, self care can apply to our physical bodies, but I think it also relates to so many different aspects of who we are. So,
mm,
for example, again, coming back to that question that the unexamined life is not worth living, when was the last time you paid attention to your financial accounts?
mm,
Do you have an emergency fund that is ready both for you and for your business? Are you able to go away from the business and you have staff members that can jump in
mm,
and help out? Or even being at the point where you can hire a virtual assistant to take off some of the lighter loads. So I think really, looking at ways where your day-to-day life, both at home and at work, there are so many places where we can apply the self-care
mm,
methodology and
yep.
be able to find ways to give back some time and energy to ourselves. And we're also propelling the economy forward as well. For me to be able to hire someone to come in
Yep.
and do home cleaning or meal prep or something like that. I mean, I don't do it very often, but at the same time, there's a piece of me that's starting to realize, like, wait, I could be going and doing X, Y, and Z while someone
Mm,
else swept my floor.
yep.
Huh, looky there. So just identifying all those places where it doesn't have to be me,
Mm,
just so I can rest. And even if it's not, I can go get a massage during that time, I can just not have to think about it. It's the mental clarity,
yep.
which brings me to the idea of clarity. I teach a series about creativity. And in that series, self care is actually the very foundation of the triangle that creates
Mm.
creativity. A little bit of a play on words there. But just this idea of self care is truly foundational, and it goes beyond who we are as human beings, and it goes into all the different aspects of our lives.
Wow. So, and you talk a lot about self-care, and I believe there will be mothers thinking that, hey, it seems easier for you because you have the few businesses, you're good at running businesses, so you can have the luxury to outsource or even to hire someone to offload the thing. So how do you handle such, maybe like reason, or I would say excuses, of people posting it to you?
Yeah, I would say pretty openly, don't believe everything you see. Yeah, I mean, really, I think there is an easy assumption made that,
Yeah.
I've hit this level and I've got it made and I've got it all figured out. And in reality, this is where we're going to get to those micro changes.
Mm,
Everything that I learn, I'm able to absorb in some capacity and I'm able to implement. And actually, I shouldn't say that I'm able to. I choose to, because there are times when someone could tell me the same thing like for 3 years. I'm just like, nope, that doesn't fit. That just
mm,
doesn't fit who I am or what I need. And then when I find the things that do fit or something I want to try, or whatever the case might be, it's not those big moments where, like I talked about, the idea of being unconscious on the bathroom floor.
mm,
Yes, that was a pivotal moment for me, but with what was just as important were all of the series of micro changes that I made after to continue to adjust the trajectory of my life. So
mm,
I mentioned to you that I'm in Ontario right now.
mm.
I have said for probably about 2 to 3 years, because I do a lot of visioning statements, and I spend some time journaling and get very clear about what it is I want to create. I've said for at least 2 years, I'm so grateful now that I go on quarterly retreats.
Wow.
Do you know this is probably the first retreat that I've done in probably those 2 years?
Mm.
So, I mean, all the travel that I've been doing, it was always for work, and I always enjoy it. I love travel. I love coming home, but I love to travel.
Mm.
But the idea of I've now created an environment that is receptive to me fulfilling a quarterly retreat. And the wonderful, wonderful person that I am learning from about all of these different things, isn't it funny that she offers 9 retreats a year that you can choose part of? And so I just had that realization yesterday where I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I've been saying for a long time now that this is something I wanted in my life, and I wasn't disciplined enough to do it on my own, or
Mm.
I didn't have the financial resources, or I didn't want to take the time away from the kids, or
Yeah.
whatever the other stories are. And yet the consistent action of setting the intention to
Mm.
say, this is something I want because I value investing in myself and
Yeah.
I value rest. And now here I am in that world. So I think it's a micro change process.
Mm.
There isn't any one thing, save the idea of like all of a sudden inheriting $1 gazillion and
Yeah.
knowing exactly how to invest it in your business. There isn't any one thing that's going to create an overnight success. It
Yeah.
is a process, and it's a series of micro changes that we make for who we are that then impact how our businesses are shaped.
Wow. That is something that I've not heard heard before. Especially you talk about never brought up in any of the episode before, which is about it kind of sum up about manifesting. Like you
Mm,
really start with all your micro changes. You change bit by bit, but the key thing is you are manifesting. You are thinking. You have that intent, and a lot of time that I see that a lot of mompreneur who are struggling in the business is because they are looking at the micro on the smaller picture rather than the bigger picture, but they have
mm-hmm,
no direction, they have no intent at all. They just I would say rant about whatever things that's
mm,
happening, but they are not doing anything to it. But you mentioned about these micro changes, which is changing bit by bit, which you may
mm-hmm,
not be able to see it, but once it snowballed, it became more visual. Um, that you can ultimately say, hey, I'm going in the right direction. Like for you, for your retreat, definitely there's a lot of 101 reasons that we can think of not going for the retreat or not having all the retreat because we want to spend more time with the children. But
mm-hmm,
at the same time, you also know that the self-care is really important. You need to take a break, you need to recharge, you need to rejuvenate yourself so that you can go for even longer hustling and also into your business. Especially you are not just handling one business, you're handling a few businesses and also
mm-hmm,
having two children. And I believe other than this, you are also having a lot of other commitments like your family, like any every other stuff that you're having.
mm-hmm,
But because of you knowing how and also been learning and also person developing yourself, that now with the skill, with the knowledge, you're investing a lot on yourself, which is also coming to back to your business. That's why
mm-hmm,
your business is kicking off. You can do a lot of things much more than in the past. And that also bring us to what is the lifeline that you feel that currently a lot of mothers will need now, like the lifeline. We talk about self care, but what is
mm-hmm.
that one thing that the mothers really need now that you
Mm.
feel especially in today's time?
I think it's a two-step process.
Hmm.
I think that the self-care is still absolutely vital, because without caring for ourselves, we don't have any space for any new information, or any new insight, any new
Hmm.
direction, because we are maxed out with
Yep.
caring for everyone else or doing the corporate job or whatever it might be. So I think the first thing in self-care is just to create that space
Hmm.
for new ideas and inspiration to come in. I think the second piece really comes down to paying attention to who's in your world.
Hmm.
And with that, I mean, really, I have an expression called the advisory board. Who is on the advisory board of your life? Because
Hmm.
these are the people that you've chosen to listen to.
Yep.
And I think that so often what happens is the people who are on your advisory board got there by accident. It could be that it's your neighbor, or
Mm.
it's your sister, or it's your best friend, or whatever the case might be, and you're allowing all of these influences to have a direct impact in your life. You
Yep.
might not realize it, but if you hear somebody complain about how terrible this is or how
Mm.
bad this is,
Yeah.
that energy is going to impact you and it's going to drag you down. If instead you've chosen maybe to listen to a podcast
Mm.
on your way into work, or as you're out running and getting groceries, whatever the case might be, the information that you choose to let into your mind and into your heart is going to have a direct impact on not only the information that you keep, but on those micro changes that we talked about.
Mm.
Because a micro change could be good or it could be bad. If
Yep.
it's the idea of, oh, I've had a really crappy day, I'm going to go have a piece of chocolate cake, that may not be a bad thing if it's just every now and then. If
Mm.
that happens every night, that's something to pay attention to.
Are you
But
speaking
you
from
see what I mean
experience?
though? Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness, I'm telling you, I literally, hand to God, I literally just last week had a conversation with my best friend who is
Mm.
also in the entrepreneurial space, and she is a health coach and all of this fun stuff. And I'm like, okay, I need to make some changes because Giardelli and I have become way too good friends. So again, it's stopping to pause and to
Mm.
pay attention to your life, because without that kind of clarity, without the pause to investigate, you're just going to continue digging a deeper hole, living a life that isn't congruent with who you are.
Wow. I, I guess maybe I can, maybe the question will be is how do I start? It's like how do I
Mm.
start? Like because for you you have a very clear idea, but if I'm stuck, if I'm lost, the people around me I do not know how to change. So how do you start? What is the first step you need to do that, or how do you get yourself out? Because I know like okay, there's three factors: clarity, micro change, and also self care. But how do I start?
I love that question. Like, I got goosebumps. I love that question because for me, I feel like, again, this is where the adventure starts. And that might be one of the first things. I think it's a shift in perspective, in the idea of everything up to this point has prepared me for everything that is going to come.
Hmm.
And there's a shift in that about looking for the positive as
Hmm.
opposed to looking to the negative. And there's so many different ways that can manifest and that can show up. I think on a very practical piece, like a very super practical how to start,
Hmm.
would be to take your calendar and block out, let's start baby steps, let's say
Hmm.
block out 2 hours. And in that 2 hour time, turn off the phone, turn off all the notifications, just completely shut out the outside world. Make sure that your kids are cared for. They're with someone who knows what to do if
Yep.
something goes wrong. You are not to be disturbed for these 2 hours.
Hmm.
And I think the first thing would be just to simply ask, like literally say outside out loud, what do I need right now?
Hmm.
Because so often we don't ever ask ourselves what
Yep.
we need. We ask what we need to do. We ask what we need to accomplish to make our clients happy, but we don't ask what we need.
Hmm.
And I think that you will find you'll be answered. There's something in you, your
Yep.
intuition will say, I would really love a glass of water. I would love to take a bath. I would
Hmm.
love to sit and journal. I would love to go for a walk. But follow that. But the
Hmm.
whole piece is you've got to create the container. You've got to create the space to be able to follow that intuition and to be able to take some time for yourself. And I think that you'll find that it becomes something that is so fueling that you then recognize how much more productive you are by taking the time for yourself. And it's something that the more that it's like any skill, the more
Hmm.
that you practice, the stronger it becomes, and the more quickly that those micro changes will add up to the bigger change at the end
Hmm.
of it all.
Wow. I love that part when you talk about giving yourself that 1 to 2 hours, really be on your own with yourself, and also
Mm-hmm.
feel for the intuition. Because in fact, this is what I learned and this is what I realized, because there was a point of time in my life I was asking myself, what am I doing? Why am I working so hard? And that was that moment that I start asking that question back to myself, and I start reflecting and stuff like that, and that kickstart everything that happens. Because Like money was there because I was in sales. Money was good.
Mhm.
The environment was good, but the people that I worked with wasn't really that pleasant. I was like really suffering from all the politics and stuff like that. And I asked
Mm.
myself, why am I working so hard and being miserable in this environment? Although the money is good, and I'm also the sole breadwinner, I'm also the husband, the father. I need to bring the money back,
Mhm.
and I was lost. It's like, why am I working so hard? Why am I in this miserable place? So that was the question that I started asking myself. I guess that it's also pretty similar, but for me is I reached a point of time that I started questioning myself, what am I doing? But for those that are not in that state, you can consider what Tonia has shared is really give yourself some time to reflect, really ask yourself what you want for yourself, right? What would you want to do? Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you get stuck, because I found that there are a couple of people that I've worked with, because on the, kind of in that professional speaker side, I also have a workshop that goes along with this.
Hmm.
So in some of the clients that I've worked with, it is a very difficult process to start to ask yourself these questions. If you're not in a habit
Hmm.
of, creating that space and having these conversations with yourself,
Yeah.
it can be very difficult to get started. So
Yes.
I actually have a quiz that I think you have the link to put up for people. It's actually the idea of kind of like a whole life assessment. And I'm
Hmm.
sure people have seen this before, especially if you've done any work in the self discovery or self growth.
Yeah.
You're going to see like the wheel of life or some variation of it. This is just my spin on it because it looks at the difference of not only how you're taking care of yourself as your physical body, but
Hmm.
talks about your relationships. It talks about your financial security. It talks
Hmm.
about your clarity on your business and on if you feel like you can grow your business or if you feel like you're stagnant. It's looking at all of these different
Hmm.
areas and being able to take some sort of like quick little quiz in 10 minutes that can give you a visual representation of your life. I think that's an incredibly helpful place to get start when you're stuck.
Yeah.
And I think too, something that's so important, I've heard so many times this idea of, well, is the goal to have a perfect circle? Like when you take these little quizzes, is that the goal? That is never ever the goal. I want to
Yes.
be very clear. The goal is never to make your life all tens
Yeah.
all the time, because frankly that's impossible.
Hmm.
Or maybe not impossible, but it's life moves, life
Yes.
changes in a moment, and there's nothing that's ever going to be that one consistent thing on
Yes.
all aspects of your life. So
Correct.
you have to recognize there's going to be some fluidity. But what I love about this example and this exercise is that it simply brings your attention to the places that you can start to make those micro changes, and then you can do a little investigating, and maybe that there's some journal prompts around that, and
Hmm.
you can say, oh, I scored like a 6, 7, 8 in all these other categories. This one's a 3. What is that all about?
Hmm.
That's a place to have a great conversation with yourself.
Which is the process that you say about discovering themselves, which is a self discovery, and that is
Absolutely.
also something that I do with my clients, especially on the
Mm.
coaching. Before even we start to talk about business, talk about what business you'll be doing, it's about to self really. I will bring them this process of self discovery to self awareness, because before you do anything, you need to know who you are, what are you passionate about, and what is your purpose of your life. That's the most
Mm-hmm.
important thing I feel personally. And also that will drive you to push out your business, and the reason and it will be a very strong reason for you to start a business, because a lot of people most people want to start a business for one reason, is to earn more money. But if you are chasing money, it's not going to bring you on a very good journey, I would say.
Mm.
Yeah. And business, you need to have that drive, that passion. And that's where in my book I talk about passion, purpose, and last but not least, to profit from it. But you need the
Mm-hmm.
passion and also the purpose to drive you towards the direction that you want. And money will be the very last thing that you think of, but you have to be profitable. So that also um, also summit. And I guess a lot of time I feel that most people who are lost, they stop to feel, they stop to have to let the intuition take charge. They always use the, I would say, the ego or the mind
Mm-hmm.
that is dictating everything. They are not feeling enough. Especially I realize that for women's, for mothers, um, or maybe some men that are more sentimental, more feminine, they need to feel, because when you feel, the gut feel is most of the time is quite right. Because like
Mhm.
for me, sometimes I realize that in the past 30 over years of my life, a lot of things I'm using my head and it's not working at all. And when I
Mhm.
start to feel, hey, things seems to be moving as smoothly as it is. Like for me,
Mhm.
I never understand why am I writing a book about mothers until when
Mm.
the dots are connected backwards. I say, hey, now I understand why. Because 9 years ago, I was connected with mompreneurs, with mothers who start a business, and they are mompreneurs like you. You started a business because you want to spend more time with your children, so that you can juggle your own life, you're living life on your own terms, and also last but not least, also pursuing your passion in
Mm.
whatever areas that you're working on, and also to give them a better life. So this is what I see. So maybe you can share with us, like, what are the current challenges and struggles that you see a lot of mothers are facing now, and what is your take on that?
I think you hit it on the head exactly. I think that so often we're listening to everyone else's opinion,
Mm,
or we're not even taking time to ask the question. And when you're in a state of constant energy being spent, and you're constantly giving and taking care of everyone else, there's always this outflow, but there's not a chance to pause and to let everything settle and to hear ourselves. And I think that that's so important. But like I said earlier, I'm a huge proponent of growth and of looking for information and of going to conferences and events and working with coaches and mentors. I don't know when the last time was I didn't have a mentor.
mm,
And I've spent
yeah.
a lot of money on coaching and development. And let me be very, very clear. I firmly believe that when you leap, the net will appear.
Yeah.
I have been in a position so many times where I'm like, I know this is what's right for me. I don't have the money in the bank for it right
Mm,
now, but I know I can make it.
mm,
And being in that place of trusting that inner voice and trusting that
yeah.
intuition to say that, yes, this is what I need. And I'm not going to obsess about the details of how to make it happen. I'm just going to follow this intuition that has never led me astray.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the process of then making the money, or, whatever the case might be, there's always so much to learn. And I think that's another important piece, the idea that to trust ourselves and to say that we make the best decision with the information we have at the time. I think when you're looking, especially for women, we tend to guilt ourselves, and
Mm,
we tend to absorb guilt from other
yes.
people, even if it was never actually there to begin with. We've
Mm,
made it up in our minds that you must think badly of me because of X, Y, and Z.
yeah.
So we're sucking in all of this guilt. And I found for me, one of the things that was so healing, especially working through the divorce and all the rest of it, this idea of saying, I made the best decision I could with the information I had at the time.
Yeah.
And whether that is a business failure, a relationship failure, actually, you know what? I don't even want to use the word failure. It was a learning opportunity,
Yes.
like for sure. And then that sounds kind of cheesy to reframe it like that. But I think that, again, it comes down to mindset.
Yeah.
I gained so much every time I tried something in business and it totally bombed,
Yeah.
because I now know how not to do it that way.
Yeah.
And being able to have that trial and error, there are some that are very public, and there are some that are very private, and it was just like, oh, let me try this new thing. That didn't work. Or there's times where I'm very open, and it was something really big and risky that I was trying and everyone knew about it. Well, I'm still learning.
Mm,
So to be very humble about the learning process, and honestly humble about life,
mm,
I think you'll find that it takes off so much pressure. And that's why I always say, like, the adventure continues. Like, here we go,
yeah.
because there's going to be highs, and there's going to be lows, and there's going
Mm,
to be beautiful sunsets, and there's going to be rain and hail. You're going to have all of it. And that's what makes this so much fun.
yeah. And you touched on a very strong point that I realized that, especially for men and women, when we became parents, we stop learning. That is what I
Mm,
observe. We stop learning, and we allow our children to learn. We want our children to learn, but at the same time, as parents, we stop learning. We stop improving ourselves. We stop growing ourselves, because all the effort is on them. Definitely, it will be
mm,
on them. But at the same time, we can, in fact, if you have that open heart, like one of my mentor always say that you have to unlearn, learn and relearn
Mm.
every single
Mhm.
day. It's like you have to apply it to your life, especially nowadays when technologies and internet are moving so fast, so advancing. Even our children are learning, like we talk about the math that our children are doing. It's so different. The method they are using are way different from our time. But if we don't improve on that, we may be losing out. So that is something that, like for us, I realized that I observed that a lot of parents stopped learning ever
Mhm.
since they became parents, and they allow all the learning for their children, and they could not be able to advance ahead because they stopped learning. And like you were saying, you take it as adventure, the mindset switch, which is
Mhm.
to look it on the other side instead of failure. Okay, this is a learning journey for me. It's a lesson for me to become a better
Mhm.
version of myself, so that I would say to become a better dad, become a better husband, to become a better business owner and stuff like that to my clients. So I would say that the journey is never ending, even for us as
Mhm.
parents, even for mothers, and also to don't be so hard on yourself, like the guilt and all that stuff. So
Mhm.
time had really flies, and I didn't feel that it has passed, like almost coming to an hour. And I would really hope to have Tonia again to share on all this, especially on the self-care. Maybe we could do another special episode. And
I'd love to.
yes. And in any way, how can the audience get connected with you? Is there any place that they can connect with you and ask you questions pertaining to what we have shared today?
Absolutely. So the website is Tonia Adleta. Doesn't get any easier than that, aside from the fact that I spell my name a little bit tricky. So lucky for you, you'll have a link. And then also on Facebook, those are two really easy ways to find me. I'm on Instagram as well. And you can
Hmm.
always shoot an email at hello@ToniaAdleta.
Wow, wow. So, for those who are watching and listening, I will be putting Tanya's link in the description below or in the comment section. So, for you guys to get connected with her. And last but not least, as I mentioned, there's a tradition which is every guest get to post a question of the day out to the audience and also to the next guest. So, Tanya, are you ready with your question of the day?
I am. I am
Okay.
indeed. I'm so excited about this, and I love this tradition, by the way.
Yes, thank
Uh,
you.
so here's what I would like everyone to consider. What are you going to do for yourself this week to take care of yourself and to create a container for some reflection?
Wow.
So this is a little bit different in the sense
Uh-uh.
of I would like to have some accountability for this. So to be able to say, for example, on the Facebook post,
Mm.
comment, tell us what you are going to do this week to create at least 2 hours for yourself. So let us know what you're going to do and then come back and tell us what your experience was like afterwards.
So the question of the day is, what are you going to do for yourself this week?
Of 2 hours this week.
2 hours. Okay, 2 hours for this week. Okay.
And then that way we can circle back and say, okay, did you do it?
Okay. So the question of the day, correct me if I'm wrong. So the question of the day is, what are you going to do for yourself 2 hours this week? Okay.
That's it.
So this question of the day is posted out to all the viewers, for all the audience, and also the listeners that are listening to this show. This question of the day is, what are you going to do for yourself 2 hours this week? So do share it with us. Do comment it below in the comment section. Tanya and I will be very, very happy to see what are your answers to this question. And this question get to post out to the next guest. So the next guest do catch this and also get prepared for this. If not, I will see you on the next episode when you come in. And Tanya, before we wrap up, any last advice for the mothers who are sitting on the fence thinking whether they should pursue their passion or they should step into entrepreneurship? So, any last advice for them?
I think if you have an inkling to become an entrepreneur, there's something in you that already knows that you have greatness waiting to be found and to be experienced. I don't think that anyone enters into the idea of entrepreneurship lightly. And it's not one of those things like, if you think this is something you want to do, there's a reason why you feel that. So I would encourage you to sit with that and to really give that voice some volume.
Hmm.
there's ways to do it safely. Yes, like I said, leap in the net will appear. I do believe that. But there's also ways to start into something that can be a safe way to do it.
Yeah.
So don't think that, it has to be like this big, huge risk. In some cases it did, like me volunteering to be laid off. But it doesn't always have to be that way. So my advice would be jump on in. The water's great.
Yeah, wow, that is a very very great advice, and I really very thankful for Tonia to come on my show and really to share such a big value, a lot of your life stories, a lot of experiences, and a lot of lessons that you have shared with us, and also last but not least, also the three factors for people to come out from the dead zone. And I'm really thankful for you, and also out to the mothers who are watching or and listening. Do remember the most important thing, which is a lifeline, which is self-care. Do take care of yourself before you start to take care of other people. Start to pamper yourself, give yourself time. Don't be so hard on yourself, and last but not least, love yourself. Okay, so thanks Tanya for today. Thanks for coming on to my show. Really, really excited and really enjoy this session, especially with so much value that you have shared. And I would really love to bring you on for future episode. And for the guests out there, thank you for watching. And for those who are watching replay and listening, thank you very much for making time to come onto this show. And last but not least, thanks Tanya for today. Thank you.
Thanks so much. This was lovely. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tonia, and I'll see you again. Thank you very much, and bye, everyone. Bye, Tonia.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye bye.